In this section, I'm going to be talking about setting up parameter adjustment mode to automatically occur at a certain frequency to ensure that you're producing the right amount of ozone to ensure that your flows are set correctly. They can drift over time, so we do recommend doing this for long-term measurements. The way to access the menu for setting up the parameter adjustment mode automation is when you're turning it on, you want to hold down the button. Then you can see it enters service menu. This isn't a very typical menu option, but so we put it under service menu. So if you select SCH, which is short for schedule, we'll see O3 adjust frequency. Right now it's set to 0, which means it's never going to automatically just switch to parameter adjustment mode. Now if we set it to 1, that means once a day it's going to switch to ozone to parameter adjustment, and it will do 15 measurements and then skip out of parameter adjustment mode and go back into NO mode. If you do 4, it's going to happen 4 times a day, which is every 6 hours. So I'll select 1, and that's how you set up scheduling. In this section, I'm going to talk about the service menu. Now, way to enter the service menu is to, when you're turning the instrument on, hold in the select button, release it when it says service menu. So in here you'll notice it says ADM, which stands for admin, TST is test, auto, IUT is auto, and SCH is schedule. I've talked about the scheduling submenu in a previous section. Let's go to admin. So in this menu it says raw and int. Raw we use for troubleshooting. What this does is it outputs in the serial data. It will output just the raw NO that was measured. Before it was averaged with the previous readings, and before using the correction factors that are computed for each measurement. So it's really useful for troubleshooting. So if we do select it to output raw NO, for each serial data point, it will, and I have to open the buffer tab on my data display program because the data grid will not display the raw NO. So if I skip out of parameter adjustment mode and go into my NO measuring nitric oxide mode, you'll notice in the header now it says NO raw and then NO, whereas before it just said NO. Some of our customers have used this for quick, if they want to see the nitric oxide changing very quickly. Every 10 seconds this is going to update, and it will be just a real quick raw data of your if your NO is changing quickly. So the next, I'll go back into my admin menu here. The next part of that sub-menu is INT, which this is mainly for debugging purposes for us here at 2D Technologies to use. And all it does is it's going to output the intensity of the detection cell. So that will not be useful for anyone. The next section under service menu is TST, which is test. And this enables you to view the flows. The first submenu here is flow. And what happens is when you select flows, it's going to automatically set to the default duty cycle for the flow rates, which is why you might have heard the pump change its pitch. And this is useful for actually if your flow rates are are not reading what they should be reading if they're completely out of the correct setting. Now on the back of the instrument, I'm just going to disconnect the 401 here so I can access the back. Now on the back of the instrument we have 2 needle valves that are accessible. Just a little Phillips head screws that you rotate back and forth for setting the total flow rate and setting the ozone flow. I'll just take a Phillips head. Now for the total flow rate, for adjusting the total flow rate, you can view this in real time here. You can see TF is total flow. If I rotate this counterclockwise, it's going to actually decrease the flow rate because it's just a bleed valve. It's just opening up the valve to allow more air from inside the box to be pulled in. Now it's easier to have a very small screwdriver, but I have a pretty big screwdriver, so I'm going to rotate it a lot just to show you. It is 606, and if I turn the screw clockwise, it's going to open up. Sorry, actually close this valve, and it's going to increase that flow rate. So now we're at 662. What we do want is 600 when we're in this mode. This is the absolute way of setting your flow rate with the correct duty cycle. So let me go back and rotate this counterclockwise again until I get to 600. And it doesn't have to be exactly 600. So we're good there. Now the ozone flow rate is right here, O3 flow, and right now that's at 14. So if I rotate this counterclockwise, I'm going to get more flow rate. We want it to be approximately 20 cc's per minute. So I'm going to stop at 20. And again, if it's, around 20, it's okay. So we're at 20. Sample flow. Unfortunately, the only way to adjust sample flow is to enter the bottom of the box where there's another needle valve connected right next to the pump. And that isn't something that typically needs to be adjusted. That's typically just a factory adjustment that we do. And right now it's reading 1128 approximately cc's per minute, which is right around what it should be. We like to set them about 1,000 because the NO2 converter is most efficient at 1,000 cc's or less. Okay. So hold the button down to exit this test menu, or the flow menu. Now LMP is for testing the lamp. We select that. The first thing it's output is the voltage, and that's the detector voltage. That should be in the range of 0.9 to 1.9 volts to be correct. If it's below if it's below 0.9, then a lot of times that's a good way to tell if your cell is really dirty or if your lamp's getting dim. Right here it's displaying A is equal to negative 3.5 plus or minus. Now it says 1.84. So what this is displaying is basically an ozone or a nitric oxide measurement, a fake nitric oxide measurement that it's computing very quickly, and a standard deviation. Now, what this should be after a typical warm-up of about 20 minutes, if your instrument's already warmed up, then this should be reading close to 0, and this should be The maximum we suggest is about 3.5. So that's looking pretty good. Now to exit out of here, let's hold the button and we hold it again for exiting there. Now, the next menu is AUT, which is automatic ozone or flow control. Now this would be used for service purposes, where if you do press manual here, it's going to set the duty cycles to be what the factory default is. So if they're kind of out of whack, you want to do that and go ahead into back into measuring, and you can use that for troubleshooting, which we can talk about in a different section. If it's not in auto, then it's never going to exit from the parameter adjustment menu or parameter adjustment mode until you press the button. So you always want it in auto if you're going to do some long-term measurements, if you're not troubleshooting. So let's put it back into auto. Once we exit that admin menu, and it's going to go into parameter adjustment mode. Now you'll notice I don't know if you can hear it, but the tone of the pumps changed because it was readjusting the flow rate, because we just set it to the default duty cycles for the flow rate. So it just reset the total flow to be 600. And that is how to use the administrative menu.